Hello and welcome to the Executive Insight series in association with KPMG, where we speak to business leaders about success, strategy and overcoming challenges. I'm Sarah Freeman, Editor of Business and Finance, and today I'm joined by Brian O'Neill, Head of Communications, Sponsorship and Sustainability at Aviva. Brian, you're very welcome. Aviva was the winner of the Diversity, Equality and Inclusion Award at the Business and Finance Awards 2022 in association with KPMG. And the judges said that Aviva represents each of the company's 1,450 employees in Ireland through their Pride, Balance, Carers and Avivability committees. Can you tell us a little bit about the key strategies you think resulted in the nomination and how you were able to execute them?
Okay, I think the term strategy is the key thing. First of all, we have a strategy. It's not yet completed in terms of where we want to go. We have structures in place to deliver on our strategy and our goals. And I think one of the key things is that you need measurable goals. One can get involved in many good activities and beneficial activities, but I think the thing we brought out in our submission was that we have goals in relation to the composition of our workforce, how we want to progress diversity through the organisation in terms of seniority, in terms of getting balance in our workforce at the highest level, right up to board level, and ensuring that everybody and anybody in terms of their diversity can bring the best version of themselves to work. Now, how do we actually manage and monitor that? Well, we have goals, we have ways of monitoring it in terms of our targets, in terms of what we do, how it moves the dial in relation to what we're trying to do. And we also have a very good volunteer structure called the community structure. And that is made up of volunteers from various communities, whether they be from Pride, Balance, Carers, Origins, which is those who are from a different racial background. We have different communities getting involved in activities. We have also upgraded, as many other organisations have, our policies in relation to paternity leave being the same as maternity leave, making sure that fathers take paternity leave, making sure that the maternity leave for our female staff is best in market, ensuring as well that our recruitment practices ensure that we get the right composition of talent into the pipeline, ensuring that our training practices, again, ensure that we are moving people and progressing people through the organisation so that they're in a position to apply for and get those positions at the upper echelons of the organisation. I must stress that, and our own group CEO, Amanda Blank, has made this absolutely clear, we are a country mile from where we want to be. I think there are only about 2 to 3 female CEOs, FTSE CEOs in the United Kingdom, which is way less than it should be. So whilst we're delighted to achieve the award, this is very much work in progress, and it's early stage work in progress. So it's a long way to go to get to where we want to get to and where the country and globally we need to get to in terms of diversity and inclusion.
Right, Brian. Well, possibly a country mile away, but that represents a huge breadth of work. Yeah. And I suppose, as you say, the key is measurable goals. Correct. Now, you've been with Aviva for over 4 years now. What particular characteristics appeal to you about the company, and what do you bring to an organisation?
The insurance industry wouldn't necessarily be noted as a dynamic industry, but our company is incredibly dynamic and has changed significantly. And again, I've mentioned our group CEO, Amanda Blanc. We were in a number of countries across Asia, Europe, continental Europe. We've radically restructured as an organisation whereby we're focused on 3 core markets, Ireland, Canada and the United Kingdom, where we're leading players in each of those 3 markets. In terms of our focus, we're a business that is trying to be, as indeed any business should be, but a lot more customer focused. But again, we need to become much more digitally enabled across our business in terms of processes, how we interface with customers. Because as we now know, our customers are expecting to be able to engage with us on mobile devices, phones, be able to do some or all of their transactions in a digitally enabled way while still, looking after our more mature customers who may not be so digitally enabled. I think that's a key point to make in terms of ensuring that there are cohorts of customers, vulnerable customers, who still need to be looked after through traditional means, and still having the processes and the structures in place to be able to do that. But in terms of, it's a very fast moving business. In terms of our sustainability ambitions, we're the only insurance financial services player that signed up to net zero by 2040. So it's an incredibly ambitious organisation. In terms of my background, it is an organisation that allows you to grow and evolve. I would come from, I guess, a marketing and communications background, and was involved in corporate responsibility. Aviva's been involved in climate and sustainability for 20 years, so I've received extensive coaching classes, taking on formal education to grow into that. And that is something, as an organisation, they absolutely emphasise, that you need to grow, you need to evolve, if you're to remain relevant and able to deliver for them.
Right, so the dynamism and ambition appeal to you. And what else? You mentioned sustainability. What else is Aviva doing in the wider sustainability arena, including climate change, that might be of interest to your customers and the wider public?
Yeah, well, you see, climate change is obviously an existential problem. And as we're all aware, Ireland obviously has a plan now in place to 2030 to reduce emissions by 50%. We're all aware of the requirement, indeed the imperative, that we stop global warming from exceeding 1.5%, and currently it's on a trajectory to go above 2%. And that means travesty. That means large parts of the globe which will no longer be inhabitable. It means rising sea levels. It means catastrophic floods. And unfortunately, we're seeing this in ever greater frequency as things stand. So from our point of view, that's why we felt just signing up to net zero 50 is essentially aligning with 1.5 degrees. We wanted to go to net zero by 2040. We've been carbon neutral since 2006. We've already reduced emissions across our estate, as in our offices, by over 90%. 20% of our car fleet is EV. We want that to be 100%. We're a leading EV insurer. So, from our perspective, we want to play our part. Some of our staff say, well, we're not emitters. Essentially, all we sell is promises on paper and increasingly digital. But we do invest in some of the biggest emitting businesses and sectors. We will no longer right now, fossil fuel production, coal, etc. But we are trying to work collaboratively with the investment industry by going along to companies in the oil industry, etc., and saying, look, if you sign up to commitments to be net zero, we can continue to invest in you. If you don't, we'll have to divest, because we've got to walk the talk in terms of where we invest.
Right, and it sounds like personally you have a great passion for this area as well, and that really comes through in, I suppose, the work you're doing.
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, it's helped by the fact that the group has invested heavily. Recently, we announced a 5 million donation to Nature Trust and Quailshire to plant 1.2 million trees. Obviously, there's a lot of publicity at the moment in terms of, how low forestation is in Ireland. But the whole thing about tree planting is reducing your carbon emissions will only take you so far. You actually have to do work to replenish the damage that's been done. And trees and plants are a great way of taking carbon out of the atmosphere. So by doing that, we're effectively contributing towards the reduction of carbon in the atmosphere. It's helping us to get to net zero by 2040. And we'll then continue our efforts to track carbon, reduce it, remove it where possible. But as I said, we need to do things like that in order to be able to reach our own targets, as well as trying to restore biodiversity in Ireland.
Right, and these are steps that certainly smaller companies could start to emulate.
Absolutely. Again, even at an individual level, there are innumerable carbon calculators. So again, staff members would say, I'm not sure if I really understand this. And I said, go on to carboncalculator.com or any number of these, start to input your own personal lifestyle, and that will come back to you with a number, and that will tell you in terms of how you are behaving in terms of your carbon emissions. Obviously, there are challenges now to progress from, I guess, our old diesel cars and our normally aspirated petrol cars onto electric vehicles. We need to ensure that the charging infrastructure is in place, that those who live in rural areas can overcome the range anxiety issues. All of those things are in place are not yet in place, but need to be in place if we are to achieve the national target, which is to have 80% of the fleet be electric or hybrid by 2030. And the fleet is over 2 million cars, and we've less than 100,000 EVs in the country at the moment.
Right, well, lots of interesting information there, Brian. And just to change tack slightly, I suppose, did COVID impact on your DE&I strategy? And if so, how did you go about managing that?
Well, it's a great question, because COVID obviously impacted on every business, big or small. And I would answer that by saying it was a positive and negative. Negative because obviously you're working in a completely virtual world, you're in crisis mode, you're trying to get everybody up on laptops and doing the basics. So in that type of scenario, things like, some of the climate and the D&I piece didn't progress as quickly as we liked. Against that, it's been a great catalyst for change, for saying, right, we never thought we could work flexibly now, where we would have between 30 and 40% of our staff in any one day in an office and the rest working from home. And it's a great benefit, obviously, for working families. Whereas mum and dad used to have to go out to drop their child to a creche 5 days a week, drive many kilometres or miles. Now potentially there's an opportunity for one or both of them to work flexibly, which gives them a better lifestyle. From our point of view, we think it's a contributor to better retention. But in terms of, it's definitely a key positive for diversity, equity and inclusion, because it allows us to reach out to parts of the country in terms of employees where we wouldn't have. It's given us an opportunity again to look at other sectors of the employment sector we haven't yet looked at.
Right, and certainly choice can only be a good thing. And Brian, what do you see as the main issue concerning insurance companies, and how would you rate, I suppose, Ireland's performance in the sector?
Well, I think the insurance industry is one of Ireland's key success stories. We employ over 28,000 people in highly skilled jobs. And whilst there is a domestic industry, there's also in this IFSC where we're sitting currently, this is one of the great success stories for Ireland. We're number 6 in Europe in terms of as an insurance market. We're the second biggest for reinsurers. So many people talk about aircraft leasing as a great success, but insurance has been preceded that by many years. So we have a huge international market here as well. We've a sophisticated functioning life and general insurance market that is as good as any other market in terms of the sophistication and the types of products and services that we offer to our customers here. We've got most of the main global competitors, in addition to Aviva, both on the life assurance side and the general insurance side. Household names, Allianz, AIG, Great West, who own Irish Life. So we've got, those are big global brands operating in the Irish market. There are sometimes concerns in terms of competition in certain parts of the market. I know the government is keen to develop that, and we are working with them in relation to that, making sure the environment is conducive, because it's a regulated market. It needed to be following the global financial crisis, but that means it's a capital intensive business, and capital is obviously for international groups. They want to go where capital can be optimized. Obviously Ireland is a good market, but we've got a challenge to be able to develop a return on capital that will satisfy our shareholder.
Sure, and just to pick up on something you mentioned there, is there more that Irish policymakers can do to support the sector?
Well, obviously on the general insurance side, and it's well documented that we need insurance reform in relation to claims. We have had, a situation in this market where for whiplash claims and personal injury bodily claims, our claims were 4.5 times those of the United Kingdom. And the government is now putting through a national insurance reform action plan. And we have supported that way back since 2017, when the Cost of Insurance Working Group made a series of recommendations. But we need to see a situation where people can claim, and eligible claimants can receive a fair amount, for whatever they are claiming for. But we've had a situation where we are paying out inflated claim amounts, for certain types of small injuries. And we've had situations where what we call the duty of care is maybe a little bit too balanced in favour of the claimant. So, we have a situation where people can potentially trespass on a sports club, walk across that club, fall, and then claim against that club under their liability policy. So on the general insurance side, there is pending legislation on duty of care and owners occupiers liability that will address that. We've been urging the government to get that passed, and in fairness, they've made good progress. We've had new personal injury guidelines, which have been in place, have been successful. On the life insurance side, the big issue is pensions coverage. Not a very exciting issue for lots of consumers, but less than 1 in 2 people in work have actually got a pension. We've got a very young, vibrant workforce, but we've also got an aging population, even though it's a growing population. And we need to ensure that people have got pensions coverage, so they're not reaching their 60s or 70s, just relying on the 15-odd thousand that the government would pay out. So there is a type of scheme called auto-enrolment, which has been in Australia for nearly 30 years. It's been in the UK for 10 years. And the government is proposing to bring in auto-enrolment in Ireland by 2025. And that would effectively enable all employees to join a scheme where they would contribute and the government would contribute to give them and start to build up a pension. And again, we are supportive of that. We're supportive of pensions coverage. We just want to ensure that it's done in a way that's complementary to what we're already doing, because it's a very complex area. There's a huge amount of types of pensions and range of pensions. So we just want to ensure that we're not adding to complexity here, that it's a scheme that people can readily understand, get involved with, and obviously give themselves the choice they want as they move through their career.
Right, well, some dramatic statistics there, and clearly lots to be done. I think we've time for one final question. Right. What would you see as the major opportunities for Aviva going into the future?
Well, we're number 2 in general insurance and we're number 4 in life insurance. And as I mentioned, we've restructured, and our group wants us to be, basically number 2, and that's where we're trying to get to, certainly in the life insurance market, maybe even number 1 in the general insurance market. So we see tremendous opportunities in personal lines and commercial lines. In other words, in general insurance, obviously we want to take a greater role in terms of the personal home insurance, motor insurance. I've mentioned EVs in terms of continuing to build our share of that as the country changes and the composition of the fleet changes. On life insurance, again, in pensions and investments, we've invested heavily in ESG products. So 70% of our flows now into new funds are into environmental, social and governance funds. So you can invest in sustainability with Aviva, and we've majored heavily in that, and we see that as a great growth area, both corporately and individually. And that's where, again, we're looking to differentiate ourselves from some of our competitors, and we see great growth opportunities.
Exciting plans ahead.
Absolutely.
Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for joining us for this episode of the Executive Insight series in association with KPMG.